Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is President of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. Tom, thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, there's a lot to chew on here, but I first wanted to get your reaction to the violence that we saw take place at the Washington, D.C. march in support of Trump.
Yeah, so much for the peaceful transfer of power. We have people peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights, attacked by the violent left that's been, in many ways, egged on by the big media and allied politicians in a Democratic Party. The problem that Americans have right now, they see an election that's been questioned because of allegations, of substantial allegations of the maladministration of the election. That's the most charitable interpretation of it. And they know there's this air of violence and censorship and suppression if they dare raise questions about it or support the president more directly. And we're the ones, those of us defending the rule of law, being lectured about the peaceful transfer of power by the likes of President Obama, who during the transition was actually conspiring against President Trump and trying to spy on his team illicitly and thinking of ways to withhold national security information from him days before the inauguration. The chutzpah of President Obama is just a sight to behold.
Yeah, absolutely. And as for the Million MAGA March, they had the right to be there. This was a peaceful protest. It's not Trump supporters that are out there burning down cities and looting Foot Lockers. The businesses that were boarded up in Washington, D.C. were boarded up because of the radical left. And obviously, there have been many Democratic politicians in the media who've been very dishonest about this, almost suggesting that Trump supporters are behind the violence. And that's just not the case. And obviously, Antifa thugs are cowards, and they weren't going after the Trump supporters when they were in large groups. They were targeting individuals. They were waiting till later in the night to go after people who, were basically alone or wouldn't be able to fight back against a huge group. And it's just such a shame and such a disgrace. And you hear crickets from Biden and Harris and the Democrats. They're not condemning this violence. The media find like one picture of a woman who was thrown to the ground after she was threatening people with a knife and then use that as like Trump supporter violence, even though they were defending themselves.
Yeah, the police in Washington, D.C. are hamstrung by the leftist mayor, Mayor Bowser. So all of this that you're talking about was foreseeable. This is the strategy of Antifa to attack the demonstrators or people exercising their First Amendment rights as they leave a protest or a demonstration, and they stand around the fringes and target people. This was all foreseeable. This is their modus operandi. And the police should have been there to protect Americans. And I think any fair analysis would show that the police were, again, because it's happened before, told to stand down as Trump supporters were victimized and beaten.
Yeah. And you were talking about voter fraud in this election, and we have the Democrats and the media who've already called this for Biden. He's the next president of the United States, according to them. Of course, there are legal challenges and whatnot, but they don't want to acknowledge that. And Congresswoman Kendra Horn, she's from Oklahoma, she tweeted this. I'll have you react to it in a second. It says, "The election is over. Experts and news outlets on both sides have examined the results and declared Biden the winner. Instead of trying to spin and divide us, we should look for common ground for newly elected officials to work together. There's no excuse for undermining democracy." So you have to wonder where these people were when they were dragging President Trump through the mud with the whole Russia collusion hoax for all of these years. And again, also, the election isn't technically over yet. We have to wait for these legal challenges to go through.
Yeah, Judicial Watch isn't an expert. We don't think it's over. It's not over legally, and that's almost always true until, in theory, the Electoral College results are blessed by Congress in January. But practically speaking, it's not like other elections where there is no dispute. There are significant legal disputes right now. You have states still counting ballots literally, in the sense they don't know who won one way or another. And all of this is being subject to challenge in court. There's substantial claims. There are civil rights claims being pursued by the Trump campaign and others. So this is like 2000. And in 2000, in the least, there was no president-elect until the Supreme Court ruled ultimately in the middle of December. It's ironic. Joe Biden's alleged, the man he's picked to be chief of staff, if he is ultimately sworn in as president, Ron Klain, his job in 2000 was to help Al Gore challenge the election results and dispute them for 37 days in 2000. So this is just, the left is doing what they're doing, uh, what they've been doing for the entire Trump presidency, trying to end it early. They don't even want the president. They've moved beyond President-elect Biden. They want President Trump to cede power immediately, practically speaking. Turn over COVID response to him. Turn over spending measures to him. And so this is not about elections. This is about taking power before the fat lady has sung. And the fat lady in this case is the Electoral College. In my view, the state legislatures should exercise their independent authority to make sure they're blessing elections that are valid. And similarly, Congress can step in as well and challenge Electoral College slates from states where there's reason to question the outcome.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, we were all expected to wait 37 days for Al Gore, so I think we can wait for Trump as well. Now, I wanted to get your reaction to lawyer Sidney Powell and what she was talking about in the video that we played in the introduction. She says that Democrats use Dominion machines to steal votes. Is this something that Judicial Watch has looked into?
Well, we're looking into it. We've got a massive investigation across 6 states, the 6 battleground states, into how those elections were handled. Certainly, the issue in Michigan, where I've read the official explanation and wasn't terribly persuaded by it, about how Dominion computer systems and associated software led to an initial error that awarded thousands of votes to Joe Biden improperly. And they say, oh, it would have been caught in subsequent rechecks. Well, let's hope that was the case, but certainly you have to figure out whether this issue happened in other jurisdictions and whether those issues were caught. So based on what we know already, given one major error, there's reason to take a look at and across 28, 30 states about where this Dominion software or Dominion operating system was used and Dominion hardware. And look, and now they're raising questions about this other company associated with the general and the Biden campaign. Look, the Washington Post had this fact check about it, and it confirmed Rudy Giuliani's allegations that the principals of this firm, the key investors, did have ties to Chavez, did have ties to George Soros. So the more we learn, the more disturbing it is. And I trust Sidney Powell. I don't have the information she has, but she was right about General Flynn. So she's got a track record of backing up what she says with evidence ultimately, and we'll know that soon, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, media, Democrats are like, oh, well, there's nothing to see here. You're a conspiracy theorist. Well, if there's nothing to see, let's see it. And then if we're wrong, we're wrong. But the fact that they don't even want any sort of investigation, even though there is legitimate concerns about voter fraud, kind of says it all. Really quickly, Biden has his transition team set up, and there are folks out there, including some Republicans, that say that he should have intelligence briefings. Is that something that you think is necessary right now? And if anything, I mean, we've had conversations on this show about how Biden in general is a national security threat. So why would he be getting these intelligence briefings right now?
Oh, I wouldn't give him intelligence briefings until the law absolutely requires it. He hasn't won officially by any reasonable measure. Secondly, as you pointed out, there are national security issues. It looks like he and his family were involved in nefarious activities with the Chinese that have compromised him. You have the Ukraine Burisma scandal. And secondly, as a demonstrated record of abusing his access to classified information to engage in attacks on his political opponents, namely General Flynn. And I wouldn't trust him with classified information unless and until he becomes president of the United States, frankly.
Yeah, all good points, Tom. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.